This is Terry, and on this video, we're going to talk about graphing lines. So let's look at our first problem here. We have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1. And we're also actually going to look at two different ways of graphing this. So the first way we're going to look at is we're going to substitute numbers in for x and then get our y values and get 2 points that way and graph. So we're just going to make a little chart over here to this side to kind of help us see this visually. And we're just going to label it x and y. So I'm going to pick an x value, and I'm going to start with 0. 0 is our best friend. So if you insert things with 0, it just makes life a little easier. So we're going to say y equals negative 2/3. We're just going to rewrite this equation, except for when we get to the x, we're going to insert that 0 in there. So now we're just going to simplify. So we say negative 2/3 times 0 is just 0 and plus 1. And so we get 0 plus 1 is 1. So when x is 0, y is 1. Okay, so we're going to do another one. We need to find 2 points to make a line. So we'll say y equals, and this time the number that we're going to replace for x, you could use any number, but just to make our life a little simpler, if we have a fraction in front of x, if you will just use the number that's on the bottom or the denominator, which is the 3, if you'll make that your x, it will actually help get rid of that fraction. So we're just going to replace that x with our 3. And we still had plus 1 because we're going back to this original equation up here, okay? And then when we solve that, we're going to get negative 2/3 times 3. That cancels out those 3's and just leaves us with -2, or you could put it in your calculator either way. So we're left with -2 plus 1, which just leaves us a -1. And so that is our y value. So that's our second point. So we're going to graph those 2 points now. So we say 0, 1. So 0 on our x. So we start at 0, 0. So he doesn't move anywhere. But then it says y is 1. So we go up to the 1 on the y axis. Then we have 3, -1 is our second point. So we're going to say we start at 0, 0. We go over to x equals 3. So we go over this way to the 3. And then it tells us that y is -1. So we go down 1 to that -1. And then there's just a line that goes between them. So that is our first line. Okay, so I'm going to show you one other way to look at this. So we've graphed the line, but I'm going to write down our original equation again. And this time, I want you to look over to the side where you see the purple bubble that says y equals mx plus b. So we're going to look at that. And what we're going to do is, if you'll notice that the m, or the number in front of x, is our slope. So if we'll look at ours, the number in front of x is that -2/3. And that's going to be our slope. And then the number by itself is the y-intercept. Okay, and so when we go to graph, we always graph the y-intercept first. So our y-intercept is 1, and all that means is on the y-axis where y equals 1, we're just going to make a dot. So we'll make a dot there. And then our slope, we have -2/3. And if you remember from previous videos, the top number tells us to go up or down, depending on if it's a positive or negative. We have a -2, so we're going to go down. And then the bottom number always tells us to go right. So we're going to go from our y-intercept, we're going to go down 2. So we go 1, 2, and then that puts us at the -1, and we go to the right 3. So 1, 2, 3, put a dot, and then we put our line between it. And if you notice our lines lay over the top of each other, that is because either way you do it, you're going to get the same answer. So we just graphed that line. All right, so let's look down at another problem here. And this time we're going to have -x plus 2y equals 4. All right, so the problem with this one is we don't have y equals on one side. It just makes our life a lot easier if we have that. So we're going to go ahead and solve for y first. So we know if we're solving for y, we leave y on that left side and everything else to the other. So we're going to move that x first. So we have a -x. So we're going to add x to both sides. So when we do that, that literally cancels out those x's, correct? And then that leaves us with what? 2y equals 4 plus x. All right, and so we still have a 2 in front of our y, right? Remember, he's like it's multiplied, so we do the opposite. So we will divide what we want to do to one side, we have to do to the other, and we're going to do it to both things. Everything gets divided. So that cancels out those 2's. So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with y equals 2 plus, and we have x over 2, or remember if there's not a number in front of your variable, it's like thought of as a 1. So we could actually just rewrite this as 1/2 x. All right, so we're going to plug in numbers like we did a while ago. So we're going to make us an x and a y. We're going to use our lovely number 0 for our x. Again, you could use any numbers. Some just make it a little easier than others. So we're going to replace. And so we have 2 plus 1/2. But this time, instead of our x, we're going to replace it with 0. Now we're going to do some simplification. So we have 2 plus, and 1/2 times 0 is 0. So we have 2. So when x is 0, y equals 2. So that's one of our points. And then for our next point, we have a fraction again. So we take the denominator or the bottom of the fraction, let that be your x. And so if x is 2, so let's plug that x in as 2 back to that original equation. And we're going to replace it with 2. So when we do that, let's now go ahead and simplify. So that gives us 2 plus, and 1/2 times 2 is just 1 because the 2's would cancel out. And 2 plus 1 is 3. So that gives us our y value. So now we have 2 points that we can graph on our line. So if we have, let's do 0, 2. If we're at 0, and then we go up, how many? 2 to the y equals 2. Perfect. And then we have 2, 3. So we start at 0, 0. We'll go to the 2 on the x-axis. And then it tells us to go to the 3 on the y-axis. So we'll go up to here, and then we draw that line. Perfect. So we just graphed that line. So we're going to go ahead and graph it the other way too, just so we can see it. So I'm going to leave us in this y equals 2 plus 1/2 x. So we're going to start there. And do we have that in the y equals mx plus b? Well, yes and no. So it doesn't look exactly like that. We don't have x first, right? But we can rewrite this if we wanted to and just say 1/2 x plus 2. Either way will work. We have the exact same thing written. We can switch because we're just on the same side of the equal sign, so we can just rearrange it. Okay. All right. So from here, we can say our slope is that 1/2, right? This is our slope because it's the number in front of x. Same thing up here. You could pull it from either direction, okay? So our slope is 1/2, and that means our y-intercept is the 2, right? Okay. Write that on here. Or as you can see, it's that number by itself, okay? So let's graph this line and see if we graph it the same way. So we're going to start out. Our y-intercept is, we said it was that 2, right? So on the y-axis, we put a dot on 2. And then our slope tells us, the number on the top tells us to go up or down. Ours is a positive, so we're going to go up 1. And then the bottom number, the denominator, tells us to go right. And we go right 2 and put a dot. And we have, connect our dots, and we have a line that's graphed. And if you'll notice, if we look at our slope, there was not a negative, it's a positive slope, and so our line is going up. If there was a negative in front of our slope would be going down like in the previous problem.